does the African concept of God differ from the African American concept of God? Tough question, but...
Well, no, it's only tough because you said African American. There's a term I have difficulty using because I almost find that a contradiction in terms. Okay, and I don't have problems saying that Africa is wherever we are born. That there is Africa reborn in us. Okay, so that the contrast is really between the African concept and the European concept, for me. Okay. And even when we, as Africans in the diaspora, think that we are responding, you see, or try to respond to a European concept, our Africanness comes through.
Or try to accept the European,
Okay? The African concept is of a force, a universal life force, which unites everything in the universe. That is, all phenomenon, all being in the universe, which flows through everything, which gives meaning to everything. It's a source of spirit, of truth, of meaning. So that when we talk about the various Orisha, some people have called them gods. I call them forces, or the Vodun, for instance, the Abasson in Twi language. We're really talking about aspects of this force as it manifests itself in the world so that we can understand it. So that you might talk about Shango, who you associate with thunder and lightning. Ogun, who comes to us through the knowledge of tools and brings the knowledge of agriculture and so forth. And I could go on and on and on, but really these all come together in one universal force. So that the concept of God, as it is related to in the European experience,
which is,
seems to be that people get locked into the personification of a concept.
What do you mean?
Rather than the significance of it, so that you have this vision in your mind of this man somewhere who is up there, I guess, who is pulling all the strings, manipulating everything. But when you really think about it, there must be a deeper concept than that. You're talking about something deeper than that. And the African conception, you see, is much more complex, much more profound, because, of course, the first spiritual concepts come out of Africa. So that you're dealing with something which is much deeper. But when people generally go to church, they aren't questioning and thinking about the complexity of what is this spiritual thing that I'm dealing with, you see. So they just accept these images. And in the European image, you have this concept of a God with a capital G, and that comes off as some kind of super person. The African concept is much more dealing with nature, dealing with metaphysical realities, dealing with the forces that interact and on our lives. And that's why your mother would say a prayer when she's planting a flower or doing her work, because she understands this as energy, as an energy source. Now, she might not consciously articulate
on
that.
Intellectual level.
Right. She doesn't have to do that. But our people have always lived that for us, you're talking about energy. And you're talking about something which is very sacred and something very special.
Now, what is ancestral communion? And how does it differ in meaning from ancestral worship?
Well, I don't use the word ancestor worship because I think that it was used mistakenly by mainly European anthropologists who came into Africa and other areas trying to explain something which they had no basis for understanding. And so they simplistically reduced it to talking about worshiping the dead. Ancestor communion it's much deeper than that. First of all, and to answer this now, I have to get very deep. Has to do with a whole different way of understanding the universe. It has to do with a whole different philosophical concept of time, for instance, where in the European worldview, you have a lineal conception of past, present, and future. And those are separated and distinguished from each other. And you can't really, if you're in one, you don't have access to the other. So we're in the present, we can't deal with the future, and we can't communicate with the past, okay? So what they saw was the dead, and they saw the living trying to talk to the dead, and then they talked about worshiping the dead. In the African conception, you have a concept of time which is sacred. It is cyclical. It therefore transcends those lineal categories of past, present, and future. We get beyond those. We're not dealing with those anymore. We're dealing with a reality which makes everything one. Everything is a whole. And that's what happens in the most sacred concepts of African people.
Even time.
Even time. Okay, and that's what happens in our rituals. You see, we are able to experience another kind of time frame where everything is one, everything is together. Now, if that were true, then it would be no problem in you communicating with your ancestors because you're all together. So that's one aspect of the concept of ancestor communion.